Okay, so we're back. We had to break for supper.
Delicious supper. Yep.
Missy made beef stroganoff, and it was delicious. And
with deer meat.
With deer meat, correct. She used deer ground
Excellent.
with it. It was amazing.
Yep.
So
mushrooms. I like mushrooms.
So when we cut off, we were talking about Afghanistan,
Yep.
right? And we were talking about a particular target and how the team you were on, you felt that the path they were wanting to take was not the correct path for that. And I agree with you 100%. You know, suspected target like that, it's not. There's no room for folks that want to do ride-alongs. I call it ride along with an assaulter. You know what I mean?
Or just get out of their realm. I mean,
yes. Nobody does what they do better than them, and nobody does what we do better than us.
Exactly. And I always thought about that, and that's one of the rules that they tried to have in A15 and other SIF companies was you had to be both. You had to be qualified in both. I did not agree with that because if you tried to do both, you half-assed them both.
Right.
If you were an SO, be proud of who you are.
I don't mind the fact that they're qualified at it. To practice it on the regular, not necessary.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But the one thing we did is, when I took over as Troop Sergeant Major, the one thing we did is the two assault teams and the sniper team, we trained together a lot.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Especially on full kit.
And so did Carl and I.
Full kit Fridays.
Carl and I went through the houses with SR-25s. Remember that? And guys did not like that. When that flame came out of that in the house.
And I tease Carl about it all the time, right? Yeah. But let's just say, for instance, after target or on the way there, we needed long-range support with us.
Well, and that's what we all agreed to. And Carl and I were adamant about that. We are not assaulters. We are there with you, and our way is to work our way to the roof.
Yeah,
and
Eagles on the roof.
And then we get on the roof, we look for squirters, or we do our job. We're back in our job.
So, so that was the kind of issue you had with Hazard Dam.
Yes.
That thing there.
Yes. So, do not go to the breach point without support, without overwatch.
And it helped for that one. We were at the breach point for, 45 minutes or some shit, just in that gravel on that hill.
And Carl was in that position. I briefed, and he saw right in there. He saw the guards, and it's, when I'm not going to apologize for what I did. I think I could have done. I've been a little more tactful about it, but I.
Did you hear Dylan? Did you hear what he said? Tactful came out of Seaux Larreau's mouth.
No, well, I had leadership arguing. I mean, they got in my face. And they're like, "You do not override us. You don't bring that kind of stuff up without my permission." And I'm like, "No, I'm not going to let you break principle. Absolutely not." So, and I saw a lot more of that. After that, we came back from Afghanistan and we went to Djibouti and whatever. How many times did we plan for going across the sea there? And I think was just once or twice. I know it was at least once. We got on the helicopters and everything and sat out there for hours, and we never went to Yemen. And things change. Things change. Drones, their kinetic hits that they could do with the Predator was a lot better by then. But we did train. We did train a lot. I got attached.
We trained a lot in Djibouti.
Yes, we did.
It was a lot, and I will say we trained more there, prepping because we were the. What was our position over there? We were the CRIF. They called us then.
Yes.
And we had Marines with us as our QRF. Nobody you want better than Marines as your QRF.
Right.
Those guys, they don't give a fuck. And we trained so much and stuff we can't do here. as far as training. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a freaking blast training there. What was that camp?
I want to say Raffaele.
No, we called it Camp Lemonade.
Yeah. Lemonier.
Yes.
Lemonier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lemonier. Yeah.
So you do realize that what two guys established that entire thing in Djibouti, myself and Travis Rolfe.
Yeah.
We were in Oman on the way when we got back from Afghanistan, waiting in Masira Island, and they needed two guys to go to Djibouti to set up and do a area study, so to speak, for us to be forward there. That was pretty much going to be the CRIF forward base for the Horn of Africa. Right.
And that was in between Afghanistan and the Iraqi invasion.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think Travis and I spent like a month there or something like that, and then came right back to Djibouti because you guys hadn't gone home yet.
Yeah.
Right. And then so we linked up, and then eventually, like shortly after that, we all popped smoke together. But yeah, me and Travis helped set that up. Great training area, great place to train. I didn't mind it there until my second rotation there.
No,
it was on my first rotation that I got sick. It was on my first rotation there.
Was that the one you got kidney stones, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And I was attached to that one to Hal Grace's team, and still
that was my team.
Still, but I wasn't an assaulter. Everybody knew that. I was the Overwatch guy or the guy fighting to the roof. Mm-hmm. And I accepted that, and I didn't. It's not that I didn't want to be an assaulter. It's just that I knew you guys were good. I mean, I couldn't. I could either do what I did good, or I could try to
half-ass.
I could try to half-ass it and try to get up to your standards. You know what I mean? And you guys were good. You guys were an excellent team. But I knew that I wasn't going to fit in to that role. I was going to do my support role and be good at it.
So Djibouti, one of those trips, but we did our first Djibouti trip, and then it was invasion of Iraq.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And
which was the CTR,
I wasn't part of the
CTR mission.
Yeah, I wasn't part of the invasion of Iraq. I was in trouble with my second wife.
Yes, and I did not go to Iraq either because I got sick off those kidney stones.
Yep.
I had a lung infection, and I couldn't go. So they put me in charge of somebody at this table. I forgot who that was.
Yep, that's when the Russell boys would come to the barracks where I was confined to barracks, and
when he says Russell boys, he's talking about my kids.
Yep. The boys would babysit me, and that's where I met Missy, and we all went to dinner together, and I taught your boys how to take butterscotch pudding and act like they sneezed into their hands. And it got me a spanking.
Thanks for that, Sue. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. But so you, at that time, then you were still in 5th group because
Yeah, I got orders for 10th group. Remember, I got orders to go to Germany.
Yes.
And I had just gotten divorced I got my second divorce. What you didn't know was I got remarried to the same woman.
Yes.
Because I had an evil plan to get all my stuff back. I had furniture, I had brand new furniture, I had a vehicle, I had all kinds of stuff that I'd paid for through the nose. And I was gonna stick it to this woman. So you and Captain Wise were rear D and said, we all went to lunch together, and you said, stay away from that evil wife. And I was like, what you didn't know was I was getting in a car with her that same afternoon, and I kicked her out somewhere at a rent-a-car place and jumped in the car and told her that we were getting divorced, and I took her orders for Germany and her plane ticket, and I was going to get everything in Germany and I thought I'd won a great one. So it was a couple days later. I called you back and I said, "Hey Byron, guess what I did? Guess what I did?" Well, of course, her and Mrs. Petreras were best friends. She'd already gone back to Fort Campbell. And you were the one that told, after I got done telling my story about how I was going to go to Germany and get all my stuff back, you said, "Can I talk now?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." "Your orders have been deleted and your leave is canceled. You have to report back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky," which is totally illegal. You know that, right?
I didn't do it.
I think I'm the only soldier in the history of the Army that had to report back to the unit to face his punishment. I mean, usually that's,
I'm sure there were some more. I'm sure that they were like, "No, get your ass back here, Sarge. You ain't going no fucking where."
Yeah, they got me. They got me.
Well, it was close.
It was close. It was close. It was a purgatory. I had to suck up to that evil woman, and then pretended like I loved her, and we had to rent another place until somebody was looking for volunteers to go to Iraq and take a couple trucks back there, and you could have.
Yes.
You couldn't stop me. I was out of there. I was getting out of there.
So, so we were back here during the Iraqi invasion, but then we went to Djibouti. I had to go back to Djibouti a second time.
Yes.
Right? And then that's when I spent, me and Travis again, spent 3 months in Yemen doing that gig. I don't think you were a part of that Djibouti gig then.
No, I was already with 2nd Battalion. I remember I'd taken 2 trucks. I don't know how they figured that was going to do that, but 1 driver, 2 trucks back to Iraq. And I ended up staying over the entire summer with 2nd Battalion.
Right.
And then 1st Battalion
joined you.
Came back over.
Pretty much.
Came
went
back
to Iraq.
over.
So that was our deployment. Then we deployed to Iraq as the battalion did, but A company, A15, deployed as a line company.
Yep.
Not a SIF.
Yep. And I was AST for 535. Mike Manley had moved out of the A15, taken over 535, and I got the teams out west in Al Qaim and Samara and some other places, and I would fly supplies out to them and things like that.
But you you were with us at Camp Justice.
Not anymore. I was your AST. I was pulling some battalion support for you, but I was
because you went out on some CTRs also.
Yes. I do the CTRs, but
you and Jimmy.
I was not allowed. I was not allowed to actually be in the company.
So there's some. I hope I have B-roll for this. Hopefully, you got a picture of you in your CTR garb.
Yep, I would dress up.
Send me a picture of that. I'm going to put that like right in the whole screen. We're just going to cover the whole screen in that, if you don't mind.
And I didn't come back. You guys rotated back, and then I stayed. And who came back between then? That was 1st Battalion. Then 2nd Battalion came in, and then 1st Battalion came back, and then 10th Group came in and replaced them. And I was two and a half straight years in Baghdad, and there was no way you could get me to go back to Fort Campbell. Did you not
go get assigned to 10th Group while you were there?
Yep, I'd actually transferred.
You transferred from 5th Group to 10th Group.
Yep, and the only reason I had to go back, and it was wasn't even 30 days. It was 30-day leave, but I had to come back here to Fort Campbell, sign out of Fort Campbell, go to Fort Carson, sign in, and then return right back to I didn't even have my stuff. Most of my stuff was still in Baghdad.
Right.
So those were great years, though. Those were great years. That's what I figured was the epitome of a special forces careers, where you could work so many multiple jobs and so many multiple missions. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't locked into any one of them. And we did. We came up with a lot of TTPs and a lot of techniques that we'd heard about that the Special Forces guys in Vietnam had done, or the guys in Colombia and El Salvador had done in 7th Group. Well, we took those and put the Baghdadi twist or the Baghdadi two-step on them. And those became what are institutionalized now as Advanced Special Operations Techniques, or SSE is a good one. SSE is something that we came up with in Afghanistan. Remember when we went to hit that one objective and left a bunch of money on the objective. So
our calling card was burning down one of the buildings on each target, and it's just a flashbang because they used a lot of hay and straw for a lot of things, and a flashbang would inevitably burn down one of the buildings every time. That's our calling card. But did you go to Najaf with us on that?
No.
On the Moss gig? Okay, got it. So after
I was on 535 then.
After like 8 rotations straight of Iraq and being in 10th Group in Iraq, you finally get back to Carson.
Yes. I came back to Carson in when was Katrina? Wasn't that November 2005?
Yes.
Yeah. I came back to Carson, and I took a 2-week leave, block leave, and then I put myself in for scuba school without a pre-scuba or anything, because I was on a scuba team. 535 was a scuba team. And then I went to 10th Group to 085, and it was a scuba team. And I thought, well, I'm going to go to this slot, and if I make it, I make it. If I don't, I don't. At the time, I was the oldest student to ever go to the combat diver course at the age of 42, and I made it. I couldn't believe I made it, but mostly out of pure hatred for the team sergeant there. But I told him I would either make it or he wouldn't smell my stinky breath in the team room anymore.
Right.
And I end up making it, which is a dumb thing to do in 10th Group. You don't want to be on a scuba team in 10th Group.
Everything's cold.
Oh no, yeah. Your next thing scuba related is pulling zodiacs across ice and then getting a chainsaw out and cutting a hole in the ice and jumping in the cold water. And I was like, this is stupid. What did I do that for? So yeah, I spent a couple more years there at 10th Group, and then I got called off of Hal Grace's team. Hal Grace and I were on a team together in 083, and Hal Grace went off to
I was on a team with in Afghanistan, and
fantastic soldier. I've been accused
great American.
Yeah, I've been accused of being the guy who deserted from SWCC and went to Afghanistan. And I was like, that's not me. That's Hal Grace. You guys are you're confusing the issues.
He shows up in our team room at 5th Group, A15. He just shows up, and I'm like, and the sergeant major is like, who the hell is this guy?
But he was our instructor at Sephardic, so we're like, yeah, great. Yeah, this guy's great. Yeah.
All right, he's deploying with us. Okay.
Yeah, we want him. Yeah.
And we weren't taking anybody because we were short.
Yeah, we were very short.
So we were taking Greybeard, Chief, the black-haired guy, I forgot his name. He was on 1-3. I think we had like 20 folks.
Moeller? Was it Moeller? Moeller.
Yeah,
Chief Moeller, yeah.
We had like 20 folks from the other
CIFs, other
SIFs, or they were on a regular team now and used to be on a SIF at one time, so they were all Sephardic qualified in some point in their career. And Hal Grace happened to be one of them. We were fortunate enough to get him.
Yep. And that's one thing that I always kind of resented about being in a SIF. You don't belong to the group. Remember, we were the last ones. We were the last ones to leave for Afghanistan out of 5th Group. Everybody else had at least went to a forward operating base to where they were going to go into the box, and we were still sitting in Fort Campbell. So I thought we were going to miss
some of that is because half the company was in Kuwait.
Yeah,
and we had to come all the way back, and as we're making our way back to Campbell so we can deploy as a unit, 5th Group is passing us in the air.
Yep.
On our way to Afghanistan.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? So it took us a minute to get home. Once we got home, you guys already had everything pretty much ready to go, and we were all right, let's rock and roll. But we took us a minute, but we got there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, remember the day we left? That's the day the damn Peditory and Davis got killed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another friendly fire incident, also wounded car's eye and things like that. And, for me to go through most of my career of one friendly fire incident after another, and here we are heading off to Afghanistan, I was like, oh, here we go again.
Right.
So once I got back to 10th Group, I was death on realistic training, and I would scream and yell about it, and not just go through the motions. Especially every team wanted to be real good on the flat range, and we'd already been to the SIF and everything like that. But I'll let you go through your targets in depth, and I'll let you do your flat range training. But over here, we got these 2 targets out here at 175 and 250 meters.
Which is why I switched to the LPVO Schmidt Bender on my gun,
yep,
as opposed to just a red dot.
Yep. And I was like, okay, hit him. And then guys couldn't hit him. They could not hit. I was like, okay, that's what you're normally going to see in combat, not just this shoot across the room crap, And so I was always pushing realistic training, and that got me put over on the dog teams. The dog concept was 7th Group and 10th Group took the pilot teams of bringing dog handlers and the Belgian Malinois in there. And for the 10th Group thing, the dogs were supposed to be a tool, and we were supposed to use trackers. It was a tracking team. They still call them tracking teams. I don't like them to call them tracking teams because we don't really train the guys to visually track. And the dogs aren't good trackers unless the handler knows what he's doing when it comes to tracking. But the Belgian Malinois are a fantastic tool and toolbox for any group. Those Belgian Malinois did a great job. Saved my life I don't know how many times. We went back in 2007. That was my last deployment, 2007, and we ate up the IED cells. I mean, they weren't, they could get away with shooting off an IED or something like that, but we were dead on it. We figured out how they put it in there, where they pulled security, where they brought it in from, and we were rolling up IED cells left and right, and loved that deployment. And then the Sunnis kind of came to the negotiating table after that in 2007, and things kind of what I thought was winding down, but not so much winding down for Al-Qaeda in Iraq, more for Americans. They were looking for an exit strategy by 2007. And, of course, the Obama administration came in there and gave them that exit strategy. And
which was fine. Yes, for Mother Army, but the green and black guys were still in 07, still rolling up targets wholesale.
Yeah. And we should have never stopped. And if we would have never stopped, then we probably didn't have to go through the whole ISIS thing. The ISIS thing came in after that. And that was it for me. I mean, I got I made 8, and I was wanting to be a team sergeant. And I'd already been kind of the team sergeant of the dog team anyway. The team sergeant they had wasn't really all there. But I was kind of in charge of that. But here was my opportunity to actually be a team sergeant, and then I answer an email that the Pimblegram.
This is actually a chapter by itself.
I didn't know who the guy was, and
so first, it's Mr. Pimble, which Mr. Pimble was the regimental secretary.
Yeah. But I didn't know that,
and he. Everybody when he would send everybody in a regiment would get this email. When he sent all, and all that was in directive for the regimental commander.
And it was for the civilian workforce. Had nothing to do with us.
Yeah, but
never. None of those emails had a thing to do with.
I never read. I always swiped past them or whatever. But that's Mr. Pimble. So go ahead.
Well, in a time where we were at Fort Carson, we had just got on the land, which was a kind of a closed network. Mm-hmm. And for being way out there at Fort Carson, you'd only get so much megabyte space. And for him to put that ash and trash in there, well, that would tie up your account, which would take you 30 minutes to, go through tools, Outlook and everything and clear it all up. It was kind of a pain, especially if you weren't on your email every day and you'd come in there every third day to check your emails and it was locked up again. So I told him, I was like, hey, you take me and this list of guys that work for me, 8 of us. I said, take us off your address book. And no signature block or nothing. He's like, I can email anybody I want. And I just, okay, hey, fag. I said, hey, and I spelled it out, hey, fag, and then I put, hey, former action guy.
Well, that is a acronym for what we call an SF. If you go to the B team or a battalion, there's a little tease that we call you fag. Former action guy.
Yeah, even
right?
Everybody at SWIC, we call them fags.
Yes.
You're got to be an instructor for 3.5 years, but you're a fag for 3 years.
Right.
So
which is all good, except for one detail.
Except that he was actually a homosexual.
Correct.
And short, fat, black homosexual guy that just really, really took offense to that. And come to find out, he'd never been Special Forces, and he'd never been, amongst us. We take our humor, and that's what I love about Special Forces guys. I mean, it doesn't matter what your ethnic background is or what the color of your skin is and everything.
We bash each other all the time, but
we bash each other.
Don't come in there as a foreigner and fuck with any of our guys.
Yeah, do not come in our team room and badmouth one of our teammates. We'll beat your ass, But so anyway, that cost me. I was pretty much told that I was staff for life.
Well,
after that, Mario V. Hill, my nemesis, Sergeant Major Mario V. Hill, said he was the regimental sergeant major at the time, and he said, "You were staff for life."
You had to listen to the general. You had to take a call.
Yep.
Right, and how'd that go? So you had to go into an office and stand at attention.
Yes.
The group commander's office.
Yep.
10th Group Commander's office, right?
Well, I had to go to the 10th Group Sergeant Major's office, and I took a call from Mario V. Hill, and then I had to write a letter of apology, and I had to go deliver that to General Repass before I took it to Mr. Pimble to apologize for him, for offending him. And then I was not allowed to be tactical or operational after that at all. I was stuck in the Force Modernization Shop.
Right.
And I walked in there.
S8 shop.
The S8 at 10th Group. And I walked in there, and Chief Bell was there. Chief Bell's the one that got me to go over to take the whole tracking concept to the dog teams and everything. And I was like, look what you did to me. You pretty much destroyed my career. And he's like, no, you'll do fine here. He said, but you're a lousy commo guy. We'll give you.
That's a fact, Dylan. He's a terrible commo guy.
He says, you have no business touching anything electronic. But
look at you.
Exactly. But you're a good sniper, so we'll give you weapons and ammunition and night vision. And I was like, oh, ouch.
This is the S8 shop at Carson.
At 10th Group.
Okay.
Right. And perfect timing because I was I was a sniper instructor, and I'd run across this technology. Not really technology. It'd been around for years in custom guns, but they were talking about switch barrel rifles and things like that. And the SEALs, my first shot, I had to go to SHOT Show. And the first SHOT Show I went to, the SEALs wanted to get together, and I knew all the SEALs. I mean, we worked hand in glove with them, especially A15. We worked hand in glove with the SEALs, so I knew a lot of SEAL snipers. And we were talking about the SEALs they wanted to switch caliber. They wanted to go to Magnum caliber. And I represent a team of 12 guys, and we've already got 4 or 5 sniper rifles on every ODA, not to mention the truckloads of every SIF company has truckloads of sniper rifles. I said, I can't justify going to the general with another sniper rifle unless we do a switch barrel. We can take the 308 rifle, the M24, and we can switch barrels with it. And of course, we had to put in 300 Win Mag,
right,
which I always thought was a lousy caliber. And doing the history of it, I found out why we got stuck with that. But then Magnum caliber was open. It turned out to be, after all was said and done, it turned out to be 338 Norma, which was also a machine gun that GD was doing, and the 330. So I looked at medium range machine guns, switch barrel sniper rifle, suppressors on everything. I thought if we had everything suppressed, and we proved it with the Marines, all going suppressed. Suppressor has nothing to do with your hearing loss or stuff like that. It has everything to do with command and control. Command and control. You want to be a platoon sergeant that commands the entire platoon during a firefight, have everybody suppressed, including the belt feds, So I got to do a lot of projects there. They started out in the S8 shop, and then eventually I moved to Fort Bragg to the G8, when I come down. They said,
regiment.
Yeah, I did this job for almost 4 years at 10th Group, and then they're like, well, you got too much dwell time. You haven't been back to combat. And I was like, that's because I'm being punished. I'm not allowed to go back to combat. Please send me to combat. No, you got to go do SWIC. And I was like, okay, I'm already E8. I don't want to be an E8 and SWIC. You don't ever get to touch the students.
Right.
I would just be in charge of other E7s and E6s that are instructors.
Right.
I didn't want to be. So I went there, and they was like, oh, no, you got too much time at the G8 or at the S8, and a lot of your projects have made it up to the regimental priority list. So you're going to go to the G8 and stay at the G8. And I did another. I got there 2011, and I did another 5 years of really learning how corrupt the Department of Defense really is. And that's a total embarrassment. Thinking about, gosh, excuse me. I'm talking about, I'm allergic to it already, but the acquisitions process of the Department of Defense, completely embarrassing. You think of Iraq, for example. Well, we had all those moms trying to send body armor and stuff to their soldiers and their kids and stuff. And I told my mom, don't do that. I don't want body armor. But we had to do it. And they had to do it because the acquisition system was so slow. And when you really get to thinking about it, when I came close to retiring, I was working with Russ Oliver, who owned OSS suppressors at the time. And I went through the Government Accountability Office, and I found out that there's, just off of the government's own numbers, 740,000 GS workers in the Department of Defense. 35% of the federal workforce works with the Department of Defense. None of them, well, very few of them, ever wore a uniform before that.
Right.
These guys had nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with winning a war. The Pentagon had nothing to do with winning a war. That five-sided wind tunnel, I call the five-sided wind tunnel, the Pentagon, they get 1 day off a year. And then the next day, they start fighting over the budget. And some years it might be the Air Force, some years it might be the Army, the other years it'll be the Navy, but they're all fighting for that, who gets the bigger piece of a pie for the next year's budget. And it's completely criminal, if you ask me, that all those people are in charge of all those guys in uniform. And you think, like General Cleveland and General Mulholland and General Repass would have some say in their regiment or in the Special Operations Command. They don't.
If you look at the acquisitions flow chart, you would, if you just saw it in a picture, you would understand why it's so fucked up. That flow chart. I saw that at the S8 shop at 5th Group. I was like, how does anything get approved?
Yeah, you're talking about the acronym .mil-PF, and and I actually had to go to these schools. I had to learn this kind of stuff, and they'd start the school out. I mean, I was an E8, multiple combat tours, and I would sit there and listen. A star on my CIB, and I would have civilians tell me, well, this is how the Army, this is how the military really works. What you do has nothing to do with the actual military. This is how we actually win wars. And I'm like, how do you win a war? How do you win? You can't even get a bolt-action rifle to the guys who need it right now. For example, that PSR, which I call the PSR, which turned into the ASR, the Advanced Sniper Rifle, that took almost 11 years to actually become a program of record. Success. It was a success, but think about 11 years for a bolt-action rifle just because it switches barrels. That's, by the time we got it to the guys who needed it in 2005, 2006, it was 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, war's over. War is over.
So you leave. So you do your time at SWIC. You get out in 2017.
At regiment, I know. I did it at the G8.
Yeah.
Not a SWIC. I got out.
I meant to regiment. Sorry.
Yeah, I got out 2016. Yeah.
And you did a few contract. Did you do any contracting?
No. Well, I tried to do consulting, and again, I jumped in with Russ Oliver, and I used those numbers I told you about if somebody wanted to take something to a Department of Defense, get it to the Army or whatever, and I was like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And because the government, working for the government, especially Department of Defense, is one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
And what I ended up doing was started out as consulting. We had 4 or 5 clients, and then Russ Oliver roped us into working for True Velocity, which is the polymer case ammunition guys, which is okay with me. I mean, ammunition was something that I thought, and I'm proud of that fact that it needed an upgrade. The entire industry needed an upgrade. Because remember, back in our day, we'd get a good lot of ammunition or a bad lot of ammunition, or this ammunition would do this, where, whether it be 9mm or something like that, we'd try to put 9mm into one of our suppressed Berettas, and it wouldn't work, and all this kind of stuff.
Plus P.
Yeah, and so it needed an upgrade, and all it was manufacturing. All it was manufacturing. So I started out with the polymer case at True Velocity. I worked for RUAG for a couple of years with John Mullins, great guy, Max Ogg, former Green Beret hero, another guy that we read about. And then I ended up working at Maxim Defense for a few years.
Right.
And then that was up till a couple of years ago, and then I got really sick and.
Coming back from shot.
Well, I got sick with a thing called valley fever. It looked like lung cancer, but it was basically just a bacteria in your lungs.
Right.
And I got better from that, but then I went down with an aneurysm, which I thought was kind of ironic because I never wanted to be a salter. I didn't like that overpressure. I didn't like all that crap you guys put up with. But all of us are walking around with, little concussions, those headaches we used to have, after being in the shoot house all day long and everything. Yeah. All of us are walking around with aneurysm. So if you exert yourself, you never know when it's going to be. If you exert yourself a little bit as we get older, and I think I was close to 59, your age, and I just. All of a sudden, my head just felt like it was going to blow off my shoulders, and come to find out, I had this concussion years ago that kind of healed itself, and then it started bleeding again, and now my CT scan looks like a bowling ball.
Right.
I got holes in my head.
Holes in your head, now, right?
Same things happened to Colonel Naylor and a couple of other guys. I've known a couple of guys that didn't survive it. They found out later during the autopsy. The same group of people that we run around in, we all dealt with a lot of overpressure. Yeah. And they don't want to admit it. The VA doesn't want to admit it. But that's what it is.
I blame the safety wall outside the main breach. That safety wall that keeps the explosion from going out into the training area?
Yeah.
I blame that wall because it's going off that wall back to us.
Right back on you. Right back on you.
That are waiting, that are next to the breach.
Yeah.
So I think that wall had a lot to do with it.
And it's not just us. It's not just special ops guys. Think of mortarmen. You know, that's overpressure. That Barrett. You know, that's overpressure, and that overpressure will get you. It'll get you in the long run.
So, So, you've mentioned a couple of times that you've seen the light where I have decided I won't work for another human again. You know what I mean? I'll go to my grave with that. And you chose that path. You're going to do stuff for yourself now, right?
Well, I try to. I
I
yeah.
think you can. I think you can. You know, you're a pit bull for the most part. You know. What else you got?
Well, for the future, I told I was a big part of the Hurricane Helene Relief Recovery Act. You know, and I worked quite a bit with Special Forces Association, and then Special Forces Charitable Trust came in there too. So I had 50 volunteers at my house and everything, and I'm sitting next to this one named Christian, and I was telling him about all this acquisition stuff that I did, you know, in Iraq and everything. And he's a young third group guy, and he's like, "Well, would you ever do another government job?" And I said, "I'd only do one government job, and I would go if Trump would have won." And this is before the election, of course, but I said, if Trump wins, I want that job where I can just go and be the Axeman at Picatinny Arsenal or Rock Island Arsenal and tell those 740,000 GS workers that you don't have a job anymore. You know,
Elon's got that job now, didn't he?
Yeah. I wanted to be and original Doge.
Took the wealthiest man on the planet to take that job.
Yeah, I would have gladly taken that job, and just to get rid of the inefficiency inside the Department of Defense, because that's one place we don't need inefficiency is Department of Defense, and hopefully it gets cleaned up quite a bit, you know. But as far as the immediate future, I'd like to be part of that, but then I really want to. Everybody wants me to write this book and everything, and I think I finally come to the conclusion that the book needs to be written, but it's not about me or my war stories. It's about all those people that
tell the war stories for you.
Yeah, it's about all those people we lost. Stories. But we lost. How many people did we lose in training, or how many people got hurt, and the rest of their life they had to go home. They didn't. You and I were lucky to ever see retirement for all the crazy stuff that we did, and all the diseases we got, and all the sicknesses we had. You know, we were lucky to see 20 years or 20. I did 28 years, 9 months. You know, and way too long. But what's funny is when we're doing it, we have no idea, and I don't think we even plan on retirement. We're just kind of going along with the motions.
That's what it was the whole time. I didn't even see 20 years go by. I didn't care.
Yeah, and you're even when you're at 15 years, you're not thinking, well, if I can just hold out for another 5 years. Yeah, exactly. You know, you don't think that way. No. You don't think that. You don't think that it's ever going to end. You know, but I wish I could just impose on the next generation that if you're going to do this job, and believe me, the job's worth it. I mean, it's worth spending your time and your adult life and your all your efforts toward being professional about it. Then be professional and train realistically. You know, don't get caught in the 80s like we did, where this is notional and bang bang bang, and no, you want as realistic training as you can possibly get, so it's not a shock when you actually get off that plane or you get out of that parachute harness and war's on. Yep. You know, it shouldn't be a shock to anybody that's professional, especially if it's a volunteer force. Mm-hmm. If we want to
Why are you here?
If we want to keep a volunteer force, then it should be the most professional, and the acquisition. Back to the acquisitions part, I would go to the Pentagon. And I would go, we live in the most industrialized nation in the world. Why are we sending our kids to war with the lowest bidder crap?
So, all right, Sue. I think we have spent, 4 hours today talking to this man?
Has it been that long already?
How long is this last one?
We're on 44 minutes on this one, which means extended edition of Lord of the Rings.
Sweet.
Lord of the
So I'm
Rings.
obviously going to have to break this up, and I need a bunch of pictures from you to help with this. I guess Emery might have some compromising pictures of you too.
Lots of blackmail material.
Yes.
Yeah, Emery does. Yeah.
And so we need to do another one of these, but I think we'll do some other format or something like that, of just you and I doing something. Did you have fun?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And,
Hopefully this helps you with your biography, figuring that book out a little bit better, get it straight. And now we got to go up to the, you got a thing here in 20 minutes.
yeah, that's okay. No, I gotta remember how it really went. A lot of it gets exaggerated. I don't like exaggerating the stories.
Well, Sioux stories. Hey, what do you always say about a war story? What's the worst thing about a war story?
An eyewitness.
An eyewitness.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So, all right before we go, I want to tell this quick Sioux story. And it's not about Sioux, but it is about Sioux. I know that's weird. It's kind of, I work for T1G, Tier 1 Group.
Yeah.
Out of Memphis. And I had to go to Camp McCall because they were wanting some training or some shit. I forgot what it was about. I was out in the Army already, been out for a minute. And I haven't been to McCall in a while, and they got a lot of larger buildings and stuff there now. It's
Yeah, you can't recognize it now.
the whole battalion's there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm walking I went to go see JW's office. You remember JW?
J.W. White.
Yeah. Right. I walked.
J.W.
I
Wright.
went to go visit
Right.
him.
Yeah.
And I was on my way to the shopette. You remember where the shopette was on McCall? It's in the same spot. And there's a road intersection there. And as I'm walking through the road, and I'm a civilian and got my goatee at the time, everything we do when we get out. And there's this female captain and a male colonel standing in the middle of the intersection, and they are talking about Seaux Larreau.
No, they're not.
Yes, they are. This was in 2010. Okay. And then I stopped and I'm like, "Are you telling the Seaux Larreau story?" And I was like, "I got a whole bunch of them," and they did. It was hilarious. They were like, "You know Sue?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. I don't think you guys do, though. I don't think you guys know who Seaux Larreau is." I think they were just taking the stories they had heard and telling them as if they knew who you were.
Attaching a name to them, yeah.
Right. There,
Yeah.
that's Seaux Larreau. I'm telling the Sue stories here at Camp McCall, a legend. So, okay, Sue. Thank you, Bubba. And we'll get you set up for your little Zoom thing you got to do here, and we'll get back. I hope everybody had a good time. Thank you.